fighting for America.
This is not a president who deserves a second term, despite the fact that he was on the Today Show just a couple of weeks ago saying he does deserve a second term. I look and say, why?
Fighting for Idaho.
My 30,000-foot look at this is to change the residency of the White House. Obama has been a disaster for the state, a disaster for the economy, and a disaster for the Constitution and the defense of this country.
Fighting for you.
I suspected Barack Obama and his ilk were around in 1776, we would have the Declaration of Independence.
Boise's Mr. Right. Kevin Miller in the morning on 580 KIDO, Idaho's place to talk.
And good morning, Kevin Miller in the morning here at 580 KIDO. We appreciate you joining us. Phone number is 580-5436, 580 KIDO. Joining us now is Stephen Yates, Senior Advisor to the Gingrich campaign. He's a foreign policy expert and Director of the National Security Staff for Newt 2012. Of course, we are expecting the speaker to join us this hour of the program. Mr. Yates, thank you for joining us, sir.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.
So you're getting ready for the events today. Mr. Gingrich coming to Idaho after that big performance last night. What do you expect as far as the crowd and his message and how it will resonate in the Gem State, which, by the way, you live in Idaho Falls, so you know all about the Gem State.
Well, I have come to learn that the Gem State is not the same in every geography, but I have also really come to appreciate the fact that people in the Gem State tend to be conservative, and I think that Newt Gingrich gives not just a genuine conservative message, but has a record of having delivered conservative change against strong headwinds in Washington, which is one of the reasons I was attracted to get to know him in the late 90s and in recent years.
You know, we seem to forget the history of Speaker Gingrich, the historic event of 1994, the battles with Bill Clinton in the age of Twitter and Facebook, and the next big star of the instant gratification media that we have. And yet, you go back historically, and what a record of accomplishments.
Well, that's my view, and I think it's the view of an increasing number of people who have a chance to meet him in person and hear what he has to say. But I think often it's forgotten this is not just a personality contest. When you change the chorus coming from the White House in Washington, there are a large number of bureaucrats who don't necessarily participate in that choir. And what is often unnoticed are the years of hard work that go into having a moment like the 1994 revolution, that the welfare reform and the balanced budgets and the general change in the political direction of our country didn't just happen on that election night. It was a decade and a half at least of really hard work that people didn't believe could happen. And so I think that when it comes to
even on the eve of
security too,
right, even on the eve of that, people were doubting, and there were a lot of lonely nights on C-SPAN when C-SPAN really wasn't thought of much. Mr. Yates, what did you think of the debate last night? If you could take off your Gingrich hat and take a look at it from a GOP perspective, is this good when you have Governor Romney and Senator Santorum really raising their voices and getting real, if you will, concerning Arlen Specter versus Romney Care and Obamacare? Is that good?
Well, I can't be completely unbiased in it, but I'll do my best. I actually think it is exceedingly helpful for us to have had so many debates, and I think that they should continue. If for no other reason, we're not just electing a president based on popularity, advertising, and short bursts of attention. We have to live with this person in a command position for 4 or possibly 8 years, and to see them have to explain a wide range of issues and explain why they've done different things in their past, to have a record that you can judge. Rick Santorum's answer on Arlen Specter was, I think, somewhat mystifying. If you try to say that you're a person of conviction first, a real conservative, and then say, well, sometimes in Washington you have to take one for the team, you have to go along, get along, and Arlen Specter was our safety net on judicial nominations that didn't exactly win by one vote. This, I think, was somewhat mystifying. And I think with Mitt Romney, it's exceedingly useful to test how deep his knowledge is of command of national issues. I mean, it is excellent to have been a governor, a chief executive. He has to explain why he governed the way he did. He's explained in the past that He appointed relatively liberal judges in Massachusetts because the Democrats had the majority there. Well, if the Democrats continue to have their majority in the U.S. Senate, would he do the same for Supreme Court nominations? I think there's a lot of issues where these debates come up with issues that should raise questions to people who really care about some fundamental issues. They may seem negative at the time, but it's important to be revealing. I mean, we recall in 2008, there were several instances that gave us an inkling of the direction Barack Obama was going. We were told not to weigh them heavily at the time, but it's really defined a lot of his tenure as president.
When we talk about foreign policy, which is your specialty, I've got a lot of questions, and a lot of folks, certainly with the deaths in Afghanistan, the bombings in Iraq, concerning foreign policy and where we're going. How is Speaker Gingrich's policy different from Mitt Romney, from Rick Santorum, from Ron Paul, and President Obama?
Well, with President Obama, I think it's a fairly simple answer. I mean, really, when I look out into the world, it is very difficult to point to a single foreign policy relationship that is better than it was 3 to 4 years ago. There are many things the president has done, but few of them have resulted in a better relationship with allies. In fact, one of the worst positions to be in the world in the Obama administration is one of our allies. They've had a lot of outreach to enemies and the hostile groups. We are currently having outreach to the Muslim Brotherhood in Egypt, which is the new Islamist force that is rising in power in a dangerous part of the world, where the president has essentially lost Egypt, which has been a ballast to try to maintain some sense of stability and peace with Israel. We have, when you try to look at the foreign policy of Ron Paul, he has a certain attraction to people who are quite concerned that we've had overreach in recent years. But when it comes down to it, I see his view when it comes to a country like Iran as dangerously naive. I just don't think it is at all consistent with what my life experience has been in the intelligence community and the Defense Department and the White House, of looking at a country that is a source of terrorism, has actively pursued a nuclear weapons program, and according to Mr. Paul, it's because we are provoking them that they feel so endangered that they have to lash out this way. I just don't see the world that way. With Rick Santorum, I think he has had some thought leadership on the issues associated with Iran. I'm not aware of the depth of his experience when it comes to defense matters generally. He hasn't really laid a marker down on foreign policy issues that are regional or particular major power relations. So with him, I think we are dealing with a leader who wants to articulate some core principles, and then we would have to trust he had the capability to execute them. To my mind, that's a bit like the country did in the gamble with Barack Obama in 2008. When it comes to Speaker Gingrich, he had his time in Congress. People can't doubt his commitment to bringing about fundamental change. We need to have fundamental change in our national security apparatus. Our national security apparatus, yes, have many honorable men and women who have sacrificed a great deal to keep America safe, but we also have very large bureaucracies who have generated some of the most profound intelligence failures to the detriment of the United States. We have to find a way to have an improved procurement process in our Pentagon so that we don't have dramatic overpayments that are an enormous burden on our budget, too. So I think Speaker Gingrich has had a depth of experience in that area, but when it comes to the world, he's spent a lot of his time since being Speaker on the Defense Policy Board with years of interaction with the leading foreign and defense policy experts of the past, advising current leaders of the Pentagon on national security threats. And so he's really gone deep on issues ranging from cybersecurity to energy security, international financial security, and also in consultations with our combatant commanders. And so I just see his preparation over the last decade plus as similar to what he had done to prepare for the revolution in '94.
Mr. Yates, please stand by. Much more with Stephen Yates coming up. Kevin Miller in the morning. Let's get you to work safely and on time. Good morning.
Hill, this afternoon at 3, 580 KIDO, Idaho's place to talk.
7:23, Kevin Miller in the morning, 580 KIDO. Joined once again by Stephen Yates, senior advisor to the Gingrich campaign, foreign policy expert. Mr. Yates, what's the deal with the Middle East? How come it's just blowing up? This is your area of specialty. You know what's happening there. How serious is the situation with Iran?
I think the situation with Iran is profoundly serious, but we really have to step back and see that we have an entire region in turmoil. We had a sense of what I would consider to be false peace for a very long time, with combustible political systems where you had a strong man in charge, in some cases an ally of the United States, some cases a sworn enemy of the United States, sitting on top of a non-representative government. And it was inevitable at some point that there would be popular movements that would challenge it. Unfortunately, in a country like Egypt, the most organized popular movement to challenge the dictatorship ended up being an Islamist group known as the Muslim Brotherhood. And so we're dealing with the aftermath there. When it comes to a threat from Iran, it sees big countries like Egypt in turmoil. It sees the emergence of a new Turkey. It sees Iraq settling down into a sense of governance, but significantly weakened from what it was in times past in terms of balancing Iran. And so Iran sees it's a time of opportunity to push its limits. It's pushed its limits through its proxy ally in Syria, which is in turmoil as well. It has asserted its influence well beyond just the Middle East, even coming into the Western Hemisphere in Latin America and attempting to cross our own border in the south to conduct an assassination on American soil of a Saudi diplomat, and presumably an attack on the U.S. Capitol. So we have, I think, a region in profound turmoil, which is why Speaker Gingrich, when he looks at this, he doesn't just look at it country by country, but steps back and says, if we want to really rebalance America's role in the world and be able to face uncertain realities in the Middle East, we first have to take seriously energy security. That it's not just an economic issue, that there are profound consequences to the energy dependence policy that the establishment has given us for the last half century. And so if we are able quickly to move in the direction of a stronger energy independence strategy, we have a lot more options where Iran threatens to close the Straits of Hormuz, which is a bottleneck for a lot of the world's oil shipments. If we are independent relatively, it is not our economy that will take the first giant hit with that kind of blackmail. So I see Iran as a multifaceted threat in a very turbulent region. We need to get serious about things at home, but we also have to get serious about developing new tools and new strategies to navigate a very different region.
What about Afghanistan?
Afghanistan, it remains very, very much a work in progress, in my point of view. It is always going to be difficult operating in Afghanistan, just given that it was never sort of a center of global commerce and modernity. It was a very undeveloped part of the world with a very well-developed narcotics network and very well-developed extremist networks. I think that what President Obama has done has profoundly soured the relationship with the one, albeit flawed, leader in Afghanistan that we could rely upon to work cooperatively with the United States and allied forces. They have come a long way since setting up a new government in Afghanistan. They've got a long way to go. But it was certainly, in my view, the right move to strike hard against the networks that were responsible for 9/11 operating out of Afghanistan. And they have a chance at a better future. Ultimately, it's a future they have to achieve themselves. We certainly had a lot of sacrifice in that country. I think there will continue to be a need for active American involvement. But as Speaker Gingrich will point out, the key to that geography is not just Afghanistan itself, it's Pakistan. Pakistan is the source of an enormous amount of uncertainty and instability in that part of the world. It is where Osama bin Laden was hidden. It is where they have many, many nuclear weapons. It is home to some of the most dangerous Islamist networks in the world. And so we have to have a much, much stronger policy towards Pakistan if we're ever going to have enduring peace and stability in Afghanistan.
Mr. Yates, we'd love to have you back. Have a great time today.
Thank you very much. Great to talk to you, Kevin.
All right. Take care, sir.